Coming up on A View from the Mountains.
Kind of like the mountain is crying because of what happened right here.
A small mountain town mayor tries to right a historical wrong, finally giving former slaves credit for opening Asheville to the rest of the state.
This was built by forced labor.
Then,
You don't know if you're going to get something thrown at you or a death threat. No, it was very scary.
2 Republican commissioners in Transylvania County leave the party over President Trump. But how would voters respond?
I gambled. I came back and said, we can do this.
And in the old mill town of Canton, a young mayor looks to the past to lead his hometown to a renaissance. Plus,
It's like the Beverly Hillbillies has made it to the White House.
imagine growing Christmas trees so perfect you deliver it to the President of the United States. We'll meet Larry the Legend. And later,
Absolute shock that we were here for 12 years.
we sit down with the godfather of Asheville craft beer for a great American story.
I wanted to do what I'm doing right now and come in and drink every day.
And he does, yeah.
We are coming to you from high atop Grandfather Mountain for A View from the Mountains, a Spectrum News 1 special. I'm Tim Boehm. Thank you so much for joining us. Boy, fascinating people and fascinating stories here in the North Carolina mountains. Over the next hour, we're going to talk about the economy out here. Of course, we're talking Christmas trees and, yes, craft beer. We're going to talk about some of the fascinating politics and some of the history. And that's where we start in Old Fort, where there's a section of rail that was built by a group of people to help open up Asheville to the rest of the state. But that group of people, many of whom died, did not get any credit, at least until now.
That's my home, baby. That's my home.
This is Jarrett's Tunnel outside of Old Fort. The imperfect, jagged edges almost seem like it's a natural tunnel for rail. But there was nothing natural about the way it opened up.
Kind of like the mountain is crying because of what happened right here.
I remember the wind blew cold.
9 miles of railroad track and 7 tunnels, including the 1,800-foot Swannanoa, pounded through the mountain rock starting in 1875. It changed the future of Asheville and western North Carolina.
We got to get this railroad done so we can connect the people in this eco-niche of the mountains with the people in the eco-niche of the coastal plain and the Piedmont. The ability to take your crops to a different market location.
The progress was priceless, or was it? Not one professional rail worker lifted a finger.
About 3,000 convicts, yeah.
And a large majority of them were former slaves.
Probably 98% were former slaves. Those who were old enough to remember probably would have thought slavery was terrible, but this is worse.
The state penitentiary leased the inmates for the work chartered by the state legislature. It took 4 years, horribly hot at times and freezing cold at others. At all times, the inmates were forced to work and live in terrible conditions, sometimes at gunpoint. At least 130 died.
The prison department did not keep the names of these people.
Oh, and you may be asking, who is this guy? Well, that is a story of its own.
That first summer, 1962, when I was 11, and I went to camp at Camp Ridgecrest. It is very close to the railroad. And I'd hear the crickets, I'd hear the train.
Steve Little is the mayor of nearby Marion, but you could also call him the mayor of this inmate railroad story.
When I was a junior at Wake Forest, I was a history major. And I had to, all history majors had to do a history thesis on something. I'd read this book called The Road by John Ely that talked about the construction of the railroad. But I thought, that's a stone's throw from Camp Ridgecrest, my favorite place in the world. So I think I'm gonna just dig deeper and do some research into that.
It took you on a path that's now lasted your entire life.
Exactly. It truly has. And I'm not finished yet.
45 years now, Little has passionately researched the story.
We got there in Boston and said, now get your tool and get to work, digging.
He even created a one-man show.
We couldn't do nothing.
Playing the role of an inmate.
I got down on my knees and I began to dig with my rock.
That passion and more than 4 decades of research led to a big moment this August in front of the old Fort Board of Aldermen.
Good evening, good evening.
Mayor Little and UNC Asheville history professor Dan Pierce asked for a favor.
We're here to ask permission of the town Board of Aldermen to construct a memorial to the thousands of inmates who construct the railroad.
The board said yes. The memorial will sit here at Andrews Geyser. The Geyser is a memorial for A.B. Andrews, a railroad executive from the time.
This helps, but it's so important that we have a new memorial that acknowledges this was built by forced labor. If it had been a white-skinned person who shoplifted, they maybe had a fine or spend the weekend in the pokey. Black skin, no. Prison, 3 years.
Roanne Bishop was part of the task force to create the memorial.
This whole line of railroad up the mountain is a graveyard. That's where bodies were buried, and we don't know where. They were never marked. So I just found it so sad and so moving that these people had given so much.
That lack of acknowledgement will soon end as the memorial rises. Approved in a year when the entire country rethinks its past, present, and future.
Yes. That sort of brings it in focus, because there's the racism is so expansive, covers so much of our past. Individuals say, I'm not racist, and that's fine, but we're in a culture where we have to acknowledge that people who made contributions were ignored because of their race. And that's what we're trying to correct with our rail project, we're calling it, to have the memorial place to recognize these people.
Recognition thanks in a big part to Steve Little and a lifelong mission.
But if you haven't done your research and you spent your life on this would still be an unknown story to most of North Carolina, right?
I never thought about it like that.
The railroad brought a miracle to me. It brought miracles to people all in western North Carolina. It opened up this part of the state so that people could get their crops to a market. They could get their crops to a market. They could go visit family that was special to them. Visitors even could come in. It changed the world. And the railroad convicts who worked on this, whose names were never even recorded, made all the difference. And that's the story of the railroad convict.
That's my home, baby. That's my home.
It is so powerful and so emotional to sit inside that tunnel knowing what happened, that heartache and that pain to build that tunnel and the others along this stretch of railway. Mayor Little continues to work on the exact wording. He hopes to have the memorial erected sometime in the spring, maybe April. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll head to Transylvania County, where 2 Republican commissioners left the party because of President Trump, and there was, well, an interesting reaction. And later, we'll head down the hill to Newland to meet Larry the Legend. Welcome back to A View from the Mountains, a Spectrum News 1 special. I'm Tim Boyne. We head to Transylvania County now, where 2 Republican commissioners left the party over Donald Trump. The story and what happened after made national headlines, and what made for what, well, was a very interesting election.
In a town known for its unusual white squirrels, which, yes, we found some real and, well, otherwise.
Brevard in Transylvania County might have an even more unusual story about the 2020 election.
Operating with integrity and strength.
Paige Lemmel grew up in Brevard. This all-girls camp started in the family all the way back in 1916. Paige runs the camp these days. It's always been important, but especially in recent years.
An all-girls camp with an all-female staff. The rock climber is female. The lead paddler, the kayakers, they're all women. So I wanted to set up a place that had no limits for girls.
Paige's role as a role model expanded when she ran and won a spot on the Transylvania County Board of Commissioners in 2012. Like the summer camp, politics runs in her family, too.
Daddy was in office. He first ran in 1972. He was successful in his first run for State House and served 3 terms, I think 6 years, 92 to 98.
Here you're running a camp for girls. And especially in the last 8 to 10 years, there's been such an emphasis on women in politics and leadership. It kind of adds a little something extra when you bring the girls in every year, right?
They really appreciated, and I think, honestly, they learned a lot about local government because they would see me running in and out and want to know where I'd been or what I'd been doing, and I would explain. And so for the girls, it was like, oh, that's really cool. Oh, that's really interesting.
Across town, Mike Hawkins grew up in this restaurant his dad opened up 53 years ago.
I was weird. I enjoyed it. I never minded working here.
Watching the family business firsthand, the ups and the downs, and now decades later running it with his siblings, it inspired him to run for county commissioner in 2008.
I tell people, and it's the truth, that I became a commissioner, I became interested in civic life because I wanted Transylvania County to be the best place that it could be.
We talk very well between ourselves.
Actually, she finishes my sentences. Don't.
For years, Mike and Paige worked hand in hand. But late last year, the Republican commissioners would make a decision that would change everything.
You know, we were concerned about certain things that were going on nationally with the party and statewide with the party, and so we would talk about things like that. The president was at East Carolina University and had a rally at ECU and said some things that were inappropriate.
Omar has a history of launching vicious anti-Semitic screeds.
It was the hypocrisy in myself as well as what I was seeing in the party. Because the longer I stayed involved, the more I disagreed with what I saw going on, particularly just this, complete and total support for the man who wasn't behaving the way I think leaders should behave. Neither one of us, nor David, is complicit, and we didn't want to be seen as being complicit. These are the times that I really miss my dad. I really wish that my father had been here. I would have loved to have known what he thought of the party because he worked so hard for so long in it. I worked really, really hard. The more I thought about what I was doing, I felt like politics just doesn't belong here. These are our friends and our neighbors that we're trying to take care of.
We know people at the state level. Some elected officials at every level will tell you privately, Republican elected officials will tell you privately, this is wrong, I am not a supporter of this, but they won't say it publicly. And that just why are you here?
A year ago this week, Mike Hawkins, Paige Lemmel, and a third commissioner, David Geis, had enough.
I gave it quite a bit of thought. I would not put my name out there with an R beside it. I have to either just play it out and just go silently or stand up for what I think.
In what must have been one heck of an exclusive for the Transylvania Times, the 3 commissioners announced they were leaving the Republican Party.
So the commissioners have now left the Republican Party. We've seen some of the reaction. So how did the campaign go? And more importantly, how did voters respond? We'll find out after the break. And a little later in the town of Canton, a young mayor is trying to help this old town rebuild by focusing on its past. That story coming up. Welcome back to A View from the Mountains of Spectrum News 1 Special. I'm Tim Boyum. We continue our story now with the two Republican Transylvania County Commissioners who left the party over President Donald Trump. We saw the reaction. Now it's time to find out how the campaign went. And how did voters respond? Let's find out. That op-ed or letter drops in the newspaper. Are y'all nervous?
Oh, scared, yeah. You don't know if you're going to get something thrown at you or a death threat. No, it was very scary.
But yeah, we were nervous. I was nervous about it.
And I did go into one meeting and got hammered and called a piece of dirt.
Transylvania County is a red county, very Republican. President Trump won the county by 16 points this year. Every statewide Republican candidate won it as well. But heading into an election year where Paige and Mike found themselves on the ballot, now as independents, they were still optimistic, especially after a New Yorker piece highlighted their story.
You know, we weren't sure we were going to run again, but people wanted us to run. They did the work for us. Mike and I didn't have to collect a single signature. People did that for us. That people were so grateful to see folks taking a stand on principle and integrity. That's a huge issue for us to solve, I believe.
Paige and Mike even ran as a duo, a joint Facebook page and digital ads.
I would say guarded, because we had taken a huge risk to stand on what we thought was right for us.
But it was interesting that even the other commissioner candidates, no one criticized our performance. Were we confident that we were going to win? You know, I hope that we would win, but you just never know.
As the results dropped on election night, Paige and Mike refreshed that website by a campfire just like where we are sitting.
We were up at my house, out on the back deck. Mm-hmm.
And what was that like that night as the numbers were rolling in?
Well, the numbers sort of just dropped and you were done. Small county, it was all in. I was kind of surprised to finish fifth. But I don't know that I was really that surprised that we lost, honestly.
There were 7 candidates. The top 3 win spots. Paige finished 5th, and Mike, the chairman of the board, finished 6th. A Democrat finished ahead of them, and just like that, 20 years of experience up in smoke.
I mean, by golly, we did great work. We laid groundwork that was incredible.
That has the right to make you angry, though, couldn't it? Because you've done such great work and you lose because of a letter that is or is not next to your name.
But that's the roll of the dice that you play in this game. You know, I really wish our replacements well.
I don't think we're martyrs. You know, I think that the people made a choice, and in this particular snapshot in time, in a highly partisan election, people wanted to send signals.
Both say they have no plans to return to the Republican Party, even with President Trump out of the White House. But they do hope a change in leadership style makes a difference in the White House and where the white squirrels roam free.
Rediscover your integrity. I would love a world where those who go into elected office maintain the sense of service to the people and park their egos at the door and remember that it's not about power, it's about serving the people.
Paige and Mike have now had their final meeting as commissioners, and they have left office. A chapter in Transylvania County history now closed. Welcome back to A View from the Mountains, a Spectrum News 1 special. I'm Tim Boehm. Our view of politics and the economy sort of combines for this next story. I want to get this right. Did you know that North Carolina has sent 13 Christmas trees to the White House, and that North Carolina farms grow 50 million trees? We now produce 25% of all Christmas trees in the United States. Well, imagine being so good at growing Christmas trees that one of yours ends up in the White House. Well, that happened for one Avery County man, and he grew up not far from here on Grandfather Mountain. He has all kinds of crazy stories, but Larry Smith's stories behind the stories are what makes him a legend.
It's sunrise in November on Grandfather Mountain. The wind chill is 4 degrees as the wind rattles through the mountain peaks. The legend of the mighty Fraser fir starts on this mountain and several other nearby mountain tops. And if you look and listen closely, off in the distance, another legend, 6 generations in the making, has his roots here too.
I laugh a lot of times. I tell people, you hear the saying that money grows on trees. And actually, for us, money does grow on trees.
Larry Smith knows the story of North Carolina's Christmas tree industry as well as anyone.
North Carolina's relatively new in the Christmas tree business.
It is. The industry basically started in the late 50s, and actually the North Carolina Christmas Tree Association was started in 1959.
Farmers searching for something beyond beans and potatoes realized Fraser firs were the perfect Christmas tree.
The Fraser fir is considered the Cadillac of Christmas trees. It has all the positive characteristics that anyone would want in a tree. The aroma cannot be matched. It'll retain its needles for a long, long time, and it'll hold the ornaments. There's really not a bad aspect to it as far as the qualities from it. So God provided us with a product that can allow us to live here on the farm and enjoy this beautiful scenery.
It takes a decade or more from seed to your living room. Tender loving snip after snip. Larry knows a perfect tree when he sees one. In 2018, Larry won the national contest. That meant one of his trees from Avery County would sit in the Blue Room of the White House.
It'll be a day I'm sure I'll remember from now on.
This is from the day the White House came to pick out the actual tree on his farm.
The shape, the size, everything about the tree just says Blue Room on it.
Yes, Mr. Smith went to Washington. His story has been all over local, state, and national media. Like a proud papa, he loves to flip through the memories of this album.
Yeah. So what was that conversation like?
Pretty neat. It was when the president walked into the room, there was a gasp by one of the people that was there. You know, it's like, really, you know, this is the president of the United States. When, you know, so they were as common as I am. They were very cordial. We had some conversation about North Carolina. He was glad that, you know, North Carolina had went with him in the election.
But after spending time with Larry, it's not his trees or the perfect White House stories that make him legendary. It's his willingness to be true to himself, to share stories that show life is anything but perfect, like the story of his grandson just before the president arrived.
He was 5 years old, and the Marine band was there, you know, practicing before they went out and so forth. And right literally inside the front door where the hallway goes from the east room to the west room, he threw up red Gatorade in chunks right on the floor. You know, my son didn't know whether to stuff it back down his throat, let it go on the floor, you know, and it's like the Beverly Hillbillies has made it to the White House.
Not long after, Larry himself created a lifelong memory.
And we'd been in the library, and I was behind everybody. So I didn't hear the guide, you know, the one that was doing the tour, say this particular rug had just been changed real recently by the First Lady. And on the outside of the room is a wooden area that you can walk, and they put a runner from the door all the way to where you walked out of the White House. And he had said, the First Lady really don't want anybody walking on this particular rug. So everybody's walked in and standing, and I'm the last one to walk in, you know, and I walk in, and what do? Walk right across the rug. So my son's hollering, "Dad, get off the rug!"
And then there's this story that might get Larry in trouble with his girlfriend Beth just for telling it.
Who is this?
The photo in this picture, I am in a suit and tie. My best friends declare that that's really not me. They've never seen me in a suit and tie. There's a story behind this. This happened on a Monday when we presented the tree at the White House. Well, the next Monday I got to go back when the White House is decorated and the tree in the blue room's decorated. Well, Beth had bought me a new suit for the next week. Well, she did not know that I'd put a pair of overalls. I snuck my overalls in the suitcase. Told her that I was going to be wearing overalls that day. Well, she got beyond furious. I mean, and it was, she was looking out for my best interest. I mean, she didn't want people to make fun of me. So she packed her stuff and said she wasn't going with me to the White House the next day. She was going to fly back home. So she was beyond furious. But a couple of years afterwards, she can smile about it. It made a great memory, but the people at the White House loved it.
Maybe some see Larry as a slow-talking mountain man who just got a new cell phone that is still a flip phone. But after spending time with him, we see him as the type of guy who insists on inviting us inside for dinner to share these stories. He's the guy who grows brilliant Christmas trees that end up in other photo albums all around the world, creating generations of traditions and childhood memories. And we see a guy creating deeper roots in his own family in North Carolina as his grandchildren grow up as fast as these trees.
They're generating some income and a great work ethic, and I would say maybe they're smarter than I am. I mean, I think one of them wants to be a missionary or a doctor. So hopefully, if that's what he chooses, that the income from this will provide that opportunity. I mean, that would be, I guess ultimately you would want whatever profession that they choose, you want them to have a passion for it and enjoy it, and I know the roots will always be here.
And that is the legend of Larry Smith, within view of the legendary Grandfather Mountain where it all started. Larry and his fellow Christmas tree farmers are hoping it's going to be a great year, and a lot of that is because of COVID and more families obviously staying at home.